Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The city of Horizon was a marvel of modern engineering. Towering skyscrapers lined the streets, their smooth glass surfaces reflecting the dazzling sunlight. Drones buzzed through the air like mechanical bees, constantly scanning the populace below. Holographic screens hung from every corner, blasting out messages of unity, security, and prosperity courtesy of the People's Communist Party. But underneath the pristine veneer, a suffocating layer of fear lurked. Evan Lee stood in the bustling square, his eyes trailing the floating projections that declared the coming election the TISA fairest and most transparent TISA in history. It was a laughable statement. Every citizen knew that the result had already been decided long before anyone cast a vote. The Communist Party would win, they always did. But Evan wasn't laughing. His hand clenched around the campaign flyer he'd often handing out, the words "Peace on a New Future" printed in bold red letters across the top. The paper crinkled under his grip, a physical representation of his frustration. As an independent candidate, Evan had expected a tough fight. What he hadn't anticipated was the overwhelming sense of helplessness that came from competing against a machine designed to control every aspect of life, down to the thoughts and people said. "Excuse me, Mr. Lee," a voice interrupted his brooding. He turned to face a middle-aged man, his eyes darting nervously toward the surveillance drones overhead. "I just wanted to say I am rooting for you. We all are," the man gave a quick glance around and then hurried away, disappearing into the crowd before Evan could thank him. It was like this everywhere he went, small moments of support followed by swift retreat. The fear of being seen supporting an opposition candidate was real, and Evan understood it better than most. He had grown up in this system, and for years he had lived within its rule. But now, as the election neared, the pressure had reached a boiling point. Evan exhaled slowly, tucking the flyer into his coat pocket and heading toward his campaign headquarters. It wasn't too much, a small nondescript office located on the edge of town, but it was the heart of his movement. His team of volunteers worked tirelessly, preparing for speeches, debates, and rallies. It was all they had left, a thin sliver of hope against the looming shadow of the party. As he entered the office, he was greeted by the familiar hum of voices and the tapping of keyboards. His campaign manager, a wiry woman named Grace, looked up from her desk. "We got the final debate schedule," he said, pushing her glasses up her nose. "They moved it up by a week." Evan raised an eyebrow. "A week? Why?" Grace shrugged. "Maybe they think it'll give them an edge. Who knows? But we'll be ready." Ready for met out a dry laugh. "Against them. We're lucky if we even make it to the stage without some technical difficulties wiping us off the screen." Grace's expression hardened. "They've come this far. We're not backing down now." Evan nodded, his jaw tightening. She was right. They couldn't back down. Not now. Not after everything they fought for. Later that night, as Evan sat alone in his office, his laptop screen illuminated his face. He scrolled through the latest news articles, his mind racing with thoughts of the election. It was then that something strange caught his eye, a data feed from the party's internal server. It was a glitch, a flicker of something out of place for a moment. He thought it was just his tired eyes playing tricks on him, but then it happened again. A line of code out of sync popped up on the screen. Curiosity got the better of him. He clicked on the feed, watching as the system spat out more data, names, locations, vote count. It was election data, but not just any data. This was the real-time manipulation of vote. The party wasn't just controlling the election. They were actively rigging it in plain sight, confident that no one could ever detect the system set hidden backdoor. His pulse quickened. This was it. The evidence he had been searching for. Suddenly, the screen went black. A warning flashed across the display. "Unauthorized access detected. Report to the nearest authorities for questioning." Evan cursed under his breath and slammed the laptop shut. They knew they had seen him. Panic surged through him, but he forced himself to calm down. He couldn't leave now, not when he was so close to the truth. The next morning, Evan met with Grace in the back room of the campaign office. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low. "Something's going on with the party's surveillance system. I found a way in just for a moment, but it was enough. They re-manipulating the election data." Grace's eyes widened. "You real sure?" "Positive, and they know I saw it." "Then you need to lie low. If they catch wind that you've found a way into their system, you just lose the election, you will disappear." Evan nodded grimly. I know that, sir, why I need help. I need someone who understands their system better than I do. That sigh when Grace leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. There's someone, a former software engineer who worked for the party. She's been off the grid for years, but if anyone knows how to expose the system's flaws, it's Sire. Who is she? Her name is Sophia Sothern. Evan S. Hart skipped a beat. He had heard the name before, a brilliant coder who had vanished after a high-profile fallout with the government. Rumors swirled about her disappearance, but no one knew the truth until now. How do I find her? Grace hesitated, then handed him a slip of paper with an address. She lives in the old industrial district. Be careful, if the party knows you, re-looking for her, they'll stop at nothing to silence you both. With a nod of determination, Evan took the paper and left the office. His mind was racing. This was his only chance, and he couldn't afford to waste it. The industrial district was a far cry from the glittering city center. Dilapidated factories and crumbling warehouses lined the streets, their windows broken and doors rusted shut. The once thriving area had been abandoned years ago, left to rot as the party focused its resources on the more profitable parts of the city. Evan approached the address. Grace had given him, a nondescript building with peeling paint and a chain-link fence. He knocked on the door, his nerves on edge. Moments later, the door creaked open, and a woman appeared in the doorway. Scifiaudiobooks. She looked older than the pictures he'd seen, her once sharp features softened by years of hiding. But her eyes were as sharp as ever, scanning him with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. Who are you? She asked, her voice steady but guarded. Evan Lee, he said, stepping forward. I am running in the election. I need your help. She raised an eyebrow. The election, your time, the party, Science already decided the winner. I know, and replied, but I also know how they were doing it. I've just seen the system, and I've now found a way to expose them. Sophia's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Evan thought she might turn him away, but then she stepped aside, opening the door wider. Come in. Inside, the room was cluttered with old computer equipment, wires snaking across the floor like veins. Sophia sat down at a terminal, her fingers flying across the keyboard. So you've found the back door, she said, her tone matter of fact. How did you? Because I built it. She didn't bother looking up from the screen. Years ago, when I still worked for the party, they wanted a system that could track and control everything: votes, dissent, even emotion. I gave them what they wanted, but I also gave them an flaw in the system. I thought it might save us one day. Save us from what? From ourselves, she said softly, finally meeting his gaze. But the system became too powerful, and when I tried to fix it, they came for me. Evan swallowed hard. We have to expose this. People need to know. Sophia shook her head. It's not that simple. The moment you go public with this, they'll kill you. You will disappear, just like all the others who tried to stand up to them. Then we will have to be smarter than them, Evan said, his resolve hardening steer. We'll find a way to reveal the truth. Sophia studied him for a long moment, then sighed, Harry. But if we do this, there's no going back. I'll be marked for death. I already am, Evan replied grimly. Shall let that get started. They spent the next few hours poring over the surveillance system, identifying weaknesses and vulnerabilities that could be exploited. As they worked, a plan began to take shape, a way to broadcast the truth to the entire city without being detected. But they both knew the clock was ticking, the party was watching, and it was only a matter of time before they made their move. The hours stretched into the night, the quiet hum of Sophia's old computers filling the room. Evan sat beside her, eyes glued to the screen as code flashed in front of him. He had always considered himself tech-savvy, but what Sophia was doing was on another level. She moved through the system like she had built it, which of course she had. This will get us in, she said quietly, breaking the silence. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before tapping the last few keys. We can override the vote manipulation algorithms and force the system to reveal the real results in real time. Evan nodded, feeling the weight of the situation pressing on his chest. What about broadcasting it? They control all the media channels. Even if we expose it, how do we make sure the people see it? Sophia's lips tightened, her mind already racing through possible solutions. The party's media network is impenetrable, but the surveillance drones, they transmit everything in real time to central hubs. If we can access one of those feeds, we could hijack their own surveillance footage. Evan finished for her, the idea sparking a faint glimmer of hope. use their eyes against them. Sophia nodded, a determined glint in her eyes. It's risky. The moment we breach the surveillance network, they'll know we'll have maybe a few minutes before they track us down. Evan stood pacing the small space. Then we make those minutes count. We need to time it right when the most eyes will be on us. His mind drifted to the upcoming debate. The debate is only a week away if we can time it for then. Sophia sat back in her chair considering it. The debate will be broadcast live. Every drone in the city will be tuned in. We hijack the feed then and there. There's no way they can stop the truth from getting out. It was a plan as fragile as it seemed, but with the clock ticking and no other options in sight, it was the only move they had left. The next few days blurred into a whirlwind of preparation. Evan barely slept running through his speeches, rallying the last of his supporters while keeping a low profile. Meanwhile, Sophia worked tirelessly to finalize the breach, her fingers never leaving the keyboard for more than a few minutes at a time. The tension in the city was palpable as the debate day approached. Holograms of the party's said candidate, Minister Cheng, flickered in every public space, his voice booming from every loudspeaker. The party's iron grip on the city seemed tighter than ever, as if they sensed that something was brewing. Evan had been careful, making sure his public appearances were brief, never staying in one place for too long. But the party's surveillance was relentless, and he knew it was only a matter of time before they closed in on him. On the morning of the debate, Evan met with Sophia one last time. They had set up their base of operations in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, where the surveillance was thinner. It was the safest place they could find, though safe was relative. Everything's ready, Sophia said, her voice low and steady. She looked more tired than he had ever seen her, but her determination hadn't wavered. Once the debate starts, I'll trigger the breach. You will have the floor. Evan nodded, the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on him. He didn't know if this would work. He didn't know if they would survive the day. But he knew they had to try. I'll be ready, he said, though his voice betrayed the nerves crawling under his skin. Sophia glanced at him, her gaze softening. You don't have to do this. If something goes wrong. At one T, Evan cut her off, though he wasn't sure if he believed it. We've come this far, there's no turning back now. The warehouse door creaked open and a figure stepped inside. Grace? She'd been coordinating the final details of Evan's sad campaign while keeping her ear to the ground for any signs that the party was closing in. They were watching, she said without preamble, every street, every corner. The drones are everywhere. If you show your face at the debates, they'll be on you in seconds. Evan took a deep breath. Good, let them watch. By the time evening fell, the city was buzzing with anticipation. The debate was being held at the Grand Plaza, a towering structure designed to accommodate hundreds of viewers in person, though the real audience was the millions watching from their homes, their workplaces, and every screen the party controlled. Evan stood behind the curtains, waiting for his name to be called. Minister Cheng had already taken his place on stage, his polished smile and confident posture projecting the image of a man in complete control. The party candidate, the guaranteed winner in every rigged election, was delivering his well-rehearsed speech to an audience that had no choice but to listen. Evan's heart pounded in his chest, but his mind was clear. He had one shot, one chance to expose the truth. He could feel the weight of the flash drive in his pocket. The key to the surveillance system sounded downfall. Sophia was watching from the warehouse, her fingers poised over the keyboard, ready to initiate the breach the moment Evan stepped onto the stage. And now our final candidate for this evening, Evan Lee, the moderator announced. The crowd's applause was polite but subdued as expected. The party's sad influence ran deep, and most people were too afraid to show any real enthusiasm for an independent candidate. But as Evan walked out into the spotlight, he wasn't looking for applause. He was looking for drones. He spotted them immediately, dozens of them, hovering above the plaza, their lenses trained on the stage. They were broadcasting the debate live, feeding the party a carefully curated version of events into every home in the city. Evan took his place behind the podium, his heart hammering in his chest. He glanced at Minister Cheng, who gave him a smile that didn't reach his eye. Good luck, Mr. Li Sheng said, his voice dripping with condescension. Evan ignored him. He cleared his throat, gripping the edges of the podium. Good evening, he began, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. Tonight, I stand before you not just as a candidate, but as a citizen of the city, a city that deserves the truth. His words hung in the air, and for a moment, everything seemed to slow down. He reached into his pocket, his fingers brushing against the flash drive. This was it, the moment that would change everything. Sophia's soft voice crackled in his earpiece. Evan pressed a button on the flash drive, and in an instant, the world around him shifted. The drones hovering above the plaza blinked, their feeds interrupted. For a few brief seconds, the screens across the city went black. Then, without warning, the surveillance network, live feed, burst onto every screen in the city. Gasps rippled through the crowd as images of vote manipulation, citizen disappearances, and covert government operations flooded the airwaves. Evan's voice echoed through the chaos. The party has been controlling every aspect of our lives, including this election. But now you can see the truth. Minister Chang Song's smile faltered, and for the first time that night, fear flashed across his face. He took a step toward Evan, but it was too late. The damage was done. The truth was out, and there was no way to stop it. The crowd erupted into chaos, people shouting and pointing at the screens as they realized what had been hidden from them for so long. Evan stood tall, his heart racing as he watched the city awaken to the truth. But he knew it wasn't over. The party wouldn't go down without a fight. Evan, Sophia's voice shouted in his ear, "They be coming for you. You need to get out of there now." He turned just in time to see the armed guards rushing toward the stage, their guns drawn. The drones above them whirred to life, switching from passive surveillance to active pursuit. Evan Sart's heart pounded in his chest as he leaped off the stage, weaving through the panicked crowd. His earpiece crackled again. "There, son, alley to your left. Go." He sprinted toward the alley, his legs burning with the effort. Behind him, he could hear the shouts of the guards and the whir of the drones closing in. But he couldn't stop now, not when the truth had finally been exposed. He ducked into the alley, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The darkness enveloped him, and for a moment, he thought he might have lost them. But the whirring of the drones grew louder, their lights cutting through the shadow. "Keep moving," Sophia's voice urged. Evan pushed himself forward, his muscles screaming in protest. Just a little further, just a little more. A blinding light filled the alley, and Evan's heart sank. The drones had found him. He braced himself, ready for the end. But then out of nowhere, a figure appeared in front of him, grabbing his arm and pulling him deeper into the shadow. It was one of the silent ones. "Come with me," the figure whispered, dragging him toward a hidden door in the side of the building. "We were not done yet.